Hello everybody, BigPlanes here, and today I have an update video for you on the American Airlines DC-10-10. Now, before I get into this update, I want to give a shout out to all of my patrons who are supporting the channel over on Patreon. Thank you to everybody who's supporting the channel over on Patreon. I really appreciate it, and you guys are one of the main reasons why I'm even able to build these planes. So, yeah, it's been a little while since the last update, but that is for good reason, because as you can see, I have finally completed the wing. So I'm going to go through what I've done here, and I'm going to go through what I'm going to do in the next video. But yes, this is a very important video, because this is finally the completion of the wing. And this was a pretty major milestone that I've been trying to reach for the last month or so. And there's a lot that goes into this, from the motorized functions and all the lights and everything. So I'm going to try to go over the list of what I've done and what the wing does one by one. Now, do keep in mind that I will do a much more in-depth tour and demonstration of how all of this works in the final tour video that will eventually be published on this plane. So I will just sort of give you a rough showdown right now of what this does, but I will do a much more in-depth and detailed tour later on. So the first thing I'm going to cover is that I've attached the engines. So I believe I had these in the last video, if I am not mistaken, but I have changed them a little bit. I've mostly just changed their orientation, since I did receive multiple comments stating that these engines are really more in a vertical position rather than a horizontal position. And I did actually go back and reference pictures of the DC-10, and the engines are indeed more squished this way and elongated this way, so they are more vertical. Now, the issue with that was it did make the engines taller, and at the very beginning with this, I did have issues with engine ground clearance, and I tried my best to bring the pylon as close in as I could. If this will focus, there we go. I tried my best to bring the pylon right here in as close as I could, just like on the real plane. You can see it comes right up to the wing on both sides. And initially I was having a hard time getting these engines off the ground. I only had about a couple millimeters, actually, of engine clearance. So what I ended up doing was, I'm going to get down here a little bit lower so you can see this, I ended up extending the landing gear. Now that is a task much easier said than done, because these are motorized landing gear, and I already had basically them tuned in perfectly. They worked perfectly, and I didn't really want to touch them, but it was important to me that these engines have good engine clearance. In fact, you can see right here with this one that there's plenty of room under these engines. It's right where it should be now, and they are in the proper, more vertical orientation that is very iconic with the DC-10. So I had to go in and change the landing gear. So I added one stud, or one vertical link, if you will, technical link, to the landing gear on each side. And let's see if this will focus. It's a little dark under here, so it may struggle, but I added one link onto each side, and what I had to do at that point was I had to move each bogie one stud out, because in order to have enough room for these to still be able to fold in and not hit the inner wall, I had to also move them out, which means that everything, all of the mechanisms and everything had to be expanded by one stud out in each direction, which took a little while, but eventually I was able to do it. It wasn't too hard. I'm very lucky that the 32 stud long axle that I used for this application had, coincidentally, one extra stud of room on each side, so it ended up working pretty well there. So the first thing I did was I raised the landing gear so I could get those engines the proper clearance off of the ground. And immediately after that, I finished off each wing. This took a little bit of work because I wanted it to be a pretty clean connection. I wanted it to look smooth. I wanted to keep the geometry correct on each side. And of course I wanted functioning flaps. Now I initially aimed to have functioning spoilers on this one as well, like I typically do for my large wide bodies. However, that just proved to be just too difficult, and in this case I could have done it, but it would have, like in most cases, resulted in a large gap right here, which I came to the conclusion that I just didn't want to have to see that, because I didn't think it would look good. I thought it would detract from the overall appearance of the plane, so I decided to forego the spoilers on this one, which is a calculated loss, I guess I would say, because I do think the wings look pretty good in their overall form. And on the bottom you can see I also added the infamous, or this is the sort of the very iconic, I guess I would say, DC-10 flap tracks, where they are sort of long and thin like this. They're very deep, I guess. I don't know how to quite put it. Don't take that statement out of context. But yes, you can see the flaps from the very back of the plane here. I'm going to try to get around the side. I have the camera, the lens as wide as it'll go. So again, it's kind of difficult to show you guys. This will obviously be in the final video in a much more detailed and well filmed sense, but this wing's a little easier to see. Yeah, so you can see that both of these flaps are extended right now. This one right here is extended. It's a dual slotted Fowler flap. Technically they're both dual slotted, but this one I wanted it to go a little deeper down than that one, but both of them are fairly accurate to what the real plane would look like, and their flapper-on in the middle does not move, and I'll get a better angle of this over here. Just trying to show you as many angles as I can. See the flap tracks under there work very nicely, and I'm also happy to report that there is very little sag at all in these wings. I did not, unlike with my other jets. Usually with these wide-body jets, I will build a dihedral structure into the wing box itself, and I decided to forego that with this plane because the real one does not have really a dihedral. It has a very slight dihedral. It's hardly even noticeable, so I decided to just not worry about the dihedral structure at all, because that greatly reduces the complexity, the overall complexity of this, and even without that dihedral structure, it still barely fit. I still barely had enough room for all the motors and all the battery boxes and the structural columns that run down the length of the plane. So even without having a wing box in here, it still proved to be very challenging to fit everything. That's because I am being a little bit more ambitious with this one than I usually am in terms of the motorized landing gear and all of that. So yes, that is something that was challenging, although I am happy to report that there is very little, I'm going to try to get a little down lower here of an angle, very little warp at all in this wing. So very happy to report about that. Another thing I'm going to add is that I did have the motorized landing gear. I think I covered this in the last video, but still no spinner. It's kind of hard to see that. Try this engine. Kind of see that one, right? There you go. Still no spinners on those engines. I just still need to add that, but engines still work. Camera does not, apparently. There we go. Yes, so very exciting. The wing is now complete. All the lights are on. Everything's done. The next thing I'm going to be working on is the nose, which is going to be pretty tricky because the regular challenges that come with building the nose, such as just sculpting the overall shape and having it be structurally sound, those are still going to apply here. But I also have to have the motorized nose gear, if I can focus the camera, there we go. I also have to have the motorized nose gear, so you can see that's what this axle right here is for. This right here is the electrical conduit that will provide power to all of the internal lights and the nose lights and the rotating beacon, everything. So yes, a lot of stuff that still needs to be done. Once I am able to figure out, hopefully I will be able to figure out the mechanism for the nose gear, that is when we will really be smooth sailing here. So that's going to be it for this video. I made a lot of progress. I'm very happy with the progress that I have made, and I will keep everybody up to date on any future updates on this plane. So that's going to be it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it, and bye for now.